Hello, welcome to Caring Connections. I'm Salley Gibney. You know, we all make caring connections every day. My guests today are going to share with us how we can make a special caring connection and save someone's life by donating blood. I want to welcome you all here. Thank you for coming. This is going to be a really, really neat show and such an important show. Caitlin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yep, so I am the Marketing and Communications Manager at Rhode Island Blood Center. I come from a TV background. I used to be a producer for NBC 10, which is, you know, the #1 station in the area. People always used to ask me about if I knew Patrice Wood, Jean Valicenti. I know all of them, and they're very kind people. And I recently made the jump this year, kind of getting out of an industry that can be difficult sometimes and switching to an industry that, you know, we really do have an impact in our community and help those who need it.
Yeah, and absolutely, so incredibly so. John, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, so I'm an account manager with the Rhode Island Blood Center. Full name is Jonathan DeCasanova. Account manager for the Rhode Island Blood Center, so I'm working a lot on the donor recruitment side of what we do as a blood center. So that entails working directly with sponsors to actually set up the blood drives at their locations, and just general donor recruitment, whether that be, you know, trying to recruit people into our centers or, you know, to those mobile blood drives that we do host.
Okay, now what did you do before?
I was a university student, so I got involved right after really undergrad. I got into volunteerism with the blood center. I had a case, medical case, so I have a patient story of myself as a recipient of blood in a 2-year span of time. To kind of put it shortly, I battled aplastic anemia and lymphoma cancer, and so both of those I was in need of blood throughout. Treatments, and ultimately decided to volunteer, finishing up undergrad, took a position, you know, after finishing that up with the blood center. So you're coming from a very personal point of view.
Yeah, certainly. We want to hear more about that a little bit later. And Dr. Pelz.
Hi, Sally Pelz. I'm a pediatric hematologist oncologist. I work at Hasbro Children's Hospital, taking care of a number of patients, children and young adults like John, not him personally, but who have a variety of different blood disorders and cancers as well.
And how did you come to become a pediatric oncologist, hematologist?
So from a very early age, I was certainly interested in science and health, and I was you know, really looking to make an impact and to care for really the most vulnerable populations and people. And I think, you know, certainly taking care of children at such a critical, you know, with a variety of but critical time, such as a new diagnosis of, let's say, a cancer, is really important and valuable. And I think I, like you, like to connect with people, and so not only connecting with the children, but also their parents and helping them through challenging times is certainly something that's very rewarding for myself.
Yeah, I can imagine, I can imagine. Now, Caitlin, tell us about the Rhode Island Blood Center. Tell us about it, what do you do, and what's the process?
So the Blood Center was founded in 1979, and we've kind of been growing every year. We service dozens of hospitals across southern New England, you know, whether it's those at like adults who need blood, or children like Sally, and then my side of things, I kind of get that message out that, hey, we need donations. You know, there's always going to be a constant need for blood. People don't always think about it or realize it, but there is a shelf life to blood products. So it's important to build that life-saving habit and go in, whether you're doing whole blood, it's every 8 weeks, platelets is every 2 weeks. So it's really important to build that life-saving habit. So I kind of work with my team and John and his colleagues in building that relationship with our community members and encouraging people to donate blood. You know, we also kind of work on, there's this misconception of donating blood is scary, it's gonna hurt, but it really is, you know, under an hour for most donation processes, and you get, you know, cookies, juice.
Oh, I know. Lorna
snacks.
Doones. When I I hadn't seen Lorna Doones in a long time. I took 3 packages home.
Exactly, and it's a perfect time to catch up on, like I like to say, it's a perfect time to catch up on some me time. So you get a break from everything going on. You can catch up on work, catch up on connecting with people. You can have your phone with you so you can text, and then you just get a little bit of relaxation. And like I said, you get some juice after, some cookies. People love our cookies.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I can attest to that.
I'll mention as well, as a blood center, I think a lot of people don't know the other things that we do outside of collections. So as a blood center, we're also bringing all of that blood that comes in as whole blood, and we're separating those products into red cells, platelets, and plasma. And then we're testing them to make sure that they're appropriate to go to the hospitals and physicians and nurses to get to the patients. And so that's the distribution process as well that we do for those hospitals. So as a blood center, I think a lot of people might, believe it or not, think we're just collecting the blood and we just shoot it off to the hospital down the street. And it's far from the reality. We've got to test those products, separate them, and then distribute them, appropriately as well.
And how are they used? You're talking about separating them, and what's the process with that? What kind of patients require these different products?
So I'll start, and then I'll let the doctor sort of get maybe a little bit more into the details. But we're typically separating the whole blood.
I see.
Now, a lot of people, when they think of blood donations, think of that whole blood donation. There are more apheresis-like donations. Many people might be familiar with platelet donations or plasma donations. But for whole blood donations, yes, we'll take that back and we'll separate it into those 3 blood products, red cells, platelets, and plasma, that do exist in that whole blood. And there's different uses. I'll just give some examples, and again, I'm going to pass it over. For red cells, a lot of red cells could be used for cancer patients. I was one myself. One thing that some people might not know is quite a number of units of blood, about 25%, is actually used for cancer patients. That's a large chunk of the supply.
And I don't think that's something that we all realize. Cancer is so broad, they're all over, and yet we didn't realize that these patients also need
Yeah, and that's typically because a patient might be receiving chemos or radiations and suppressing those numbers that they need to sort of bring back up. Platelets is an easy one as well to relate to cancer patients, because quite a number of them are receiving platelets, but that's a clotting mechanism, in your blood. So there's probably a number of reasons why platelets can be used.
Share with us about blood donations for your patients and the need.
Yeah, so certainly there's a great need. We have quite a number of children, as well as adults at the hospital as well, who are undergoing any number of kinds of treatments. And as John said, chemotherapy and radiation specifically really impact our body's own ability to make these cells. And so there are going to be times over the course of someone's treatment where their body is not generating those cells. They need that support to, be safe, to prevent significant bleeding or severe, incapacitating fatigue that can happen as a result of being low on either, platelets or the red blood cells. But in addition to cancer patients, we also have quite a number of individual patients who have other conditions that might require any number of these products.
And what are some of these other conditions that you're working with?
Well, John had mentioned aplastic anemia, where not as a result of chemotherapy or radiation, but the body just stops producing those cells as well, and those patients need that support. And there are people who are born without the ability to make one or another type of blood cell properly, who again need that support to sustain life and to be able to enjoy life, and for the kids that we see go to school and participate and run around with their friends, they need these products to be able to do that.
And I just want to add a popular condition that a lot of people, I shouldn't say it's popular, but a lot of people are aware of it, is sickle cell.
Exactly.
I was just going to mention
this is why it's important that we have that diverse blood supply, because they'll be better matched with someone who is closer to them than, say, John and I. So it's really important that those who are considering it but aren't so sure really look into what they can do, and they can visit our website. We have all of our information, and it will help us maintain that safe, stable, and diverse blood supply in our community.
Yeah. I don't think that we think about the necessity of a diverse population. Now, you see this frequently.
Yeah, no, we have many children with sickle cell anemia, and there are, a lot of children who have this condition do require numerous transfusions over the course of their lifetime. And they can be, as frequent as once a month or more, depending on what's going on with the child at that time. And because one of the things that's also not as well known is that in addition to the blood types that we call, the A, B, and O, there are other proteins on the surface of our red blood cells that may differ depending on someone's genetic makeup. And so that is impacted a lot by someone's
So different
background.
ethnic groups, it's very, very important for them to realize that their blood is really, really needed.
Exactly.
For so many.
Exactly.
So some examples of this.
So, as I said, we have certain children in our clinic who've received transfusions over the course of years, and unfortunately have developed reactions, and so their body can't really accept certain types of blood, and they need to really be very closely matched to the unit or to that blood product that they're receiving, and so sometimes that causes, certainly especially with blood shortages, that causes a lot of anxiety on the part of the providers, but as much and even more so on the part of the patient and family, whether or not they're going to be able to receive that life-sustaining unit.
I can't imagine being a parent with a child who needs blood and not having it be available. I mean, that is something that none of us would ever want to even even dream of, So it really is kind of a, so let's talk now. So we're looking for people, all kinds of people, everyone, every nationality, every ethnic group, to be aware of this, that the need is so great, and your blood can save someone's life. So a lot of people, not a lot of people, some people are worried about the process. John, take us through the process of giving blood. Someone shows up at the center.
Yeah.
Or at the, at wherever the location is.
Certainly. So in and out, we typically say about 45 minutes to an hour. The donation itself, though, is typically only 5 to 10 minutes. But coming in the door, you register. That takes about 5 to 10 minutes. You go through around 46 questions. They're yes and no, so they go fairly, quickly. After you're done with that registration piece, a phlebotomist will take you into a private area, and they'll go through the interview, we call it. Sounds a little intense, but it's nice and easy. You just go through those questions, make sure that you're an appropriate donor, essentially. After that, then you actually go onto the donor floor, you sit in the chair, and then depending on what type of donation, so going back to the different types of donations, whole blood, you can do platelets, plasma, but just speaking to whole blood, that's around 5 to 10 minutes on average. And then after that is the great part that Caitlin mentioned earlier, you get those cookies and snacks, and we typically ask someone to stick around for about 15 minutes to refresh, get those glucose levels back up before they're on their way.
Now, people may be wondering, they have a certain maybe a little bit of their blood pressure or this or that. What are the things that you look at when you're right there before you're able to donate the blood?
So the main ones are blood pressure, iron, so hematocrit we'll look at, and then also pulse.
And temperature.
And temperature. So those are the main, I would say, 4 things that we look at.
I think I mentioned to you that when I went, my temperature wouldn't come up on the machine.
Yeah.
And I said to them, but I'm here, I'm alive. And they said, unless the blood pressure, the temperature was registered, I wouldn't be allowed to give blood.
Yeah.
But those are simple little things, just a blood pressure, a hematocrit, and
those are just a few, to be honest, of the pretty intensive FDA guidelines that were given. And so at the end of the day, we want to make sure that donors are appropriate, right? So it's a donor side of it where we want to make sure that they're healthy enough to donate, and then also the hospital and patient side of it where we want to make sure that they're not going to be receiving anything that would actually put their patient in more harm.
Right. Now, you donate a pint of blood, but that can be used in many different ways, in many different things. Can you share with us some of the situations where the breakdown of that pint of blood are used?
Well, I think, John had described a little bit that, we had talked a little bit about red blood cells and platelets, and there's also a substance called plasma. So we didn't really talk about that yet. Plasma is really a lot of the liquid portion of our whole blood, but it also has a lot of different proteins, and those proteins actually are some of the main makeup of healthy blood clotting proteins that allow us to stop bleeding, perhaps. It's primarily or frequently used for patients who are actually requiring multiple blood transfusions and platelet transfusions as a result of something like a trauma, like a car accident, where they're having a lot of blood loss. When you give just red blood cells and just platelets, you're not actually getting a lot of those extra important blood clotting proteins, and that's what the plasma is there for. So this allows the patient or the person who's receiving these transfusions to obviously have a more balanced transfusion that allows them to stop bleeding.
Okay, so you have different kinds of units that go out. You have mobile units. Tell us a little bit about your whole process with that.
So yeah, it would, our unit is collected and it goes to the lab. They do all the testing. They, break it down into the different types of products. And then we have a great hospital services team that is constantly working with our hospitals that we partner with on, okay, what are your levels looking for this type of blood, or what's your O neg, O pos looking like? Do you need platelets? They're looking at the patients that they're going to be servicing this week, and then they kind of figure out how to distribute that throughout our communities. And you'll maybe even see like a little red van that says Rhode Island Blood Center, and that's our team that is working to get it to the hospitals that need it.
Yeah, that's cool. John, will you tell us about how it was for you? I mean, suddenly you have this diagnosis.
Yes.
And you were how old?
I was 20 at the time.
Wow.
And it was about a 2-year sort of journey. I will be honest, at the time, I had no idea of all the things that happen, on the background of, how that blood unit actually gets, to me. All I know is I was receiving quite a bit of them, and I was thankful for them. Yeah. But obviously working in the industry now shines a little bit of a different light on how thankful I am for all those donors. Right.
But how were you feeling at the time? What were you? Suddenly you were weak, or you weren't feeling? How did it start?
So I was taking a university course over the summer, going to go into my senior year, and I started feeling fatigued. That said, I also was a soccer captain at the university, so I thought maybe that week I just did a little bit too much on my body. But a week or two went by, and I was up at school, and my friend actually vividly remembers the moment where I said no to going to the gym and working out. And that was powerful to him because he never thought I would ever say that before.
Yeah.
And so I went home, and I remember just sleeping for, I want to say, about 12 to 18 hours. Wow. And at university, I wasn't one of those students that slept in. We had 5 a.m., 6 a.m. practices, so I didn't get much sleep. And so sleeping that long felt amazing, but it was a little bit off from my typical. Long story short, I went to the doctor. They did some blood tests, which is how you diagnose quite often, a hematology disease. And I was told I had developed, actually at the time, something called ITP, which was a loss of platelets. It then was discovered that it was actually aplastic anemia, which, as a doctor mentioned earlier, pretty much my bone marrow just shut down.
Wow.
And so I was not able to naturally myself produce white blood cells, red cells.
And you had nothing
and
before that time?
No, perfectly healthy. everyone in my family is perfectly healthy. You know, I've got my grandparents on both sides around. You know, you were speaking earlier about, you know, how you couldn't believe or understand how maybe a mother could watch, you know, their child go through something like this. And I still actually am grateful, believe it or not, that it happened to me, as weirdly as that sounds, because I couldn't imagine what my mother went through. Or, you know, if I'm lucky enough one day to have children, seeing them in that position, as a parent, you'd want that to happen to you, not the other way around.
Absolutely.
And so I mention that because I do remember being in the hospital, actually just aware enough of the situation and thankful that this was happening to me and not all of my loved ones around me. Because I don't know, I think I would actually, I think I did much better mentally it happening to me versus the other way.
Because you're going
around.
through it and you're watching them.
As odd as that sounds, I think that's just how I'm wired.
Oh, wow. And you see this all the time, don't you? With your patients and their parents, and how do you deal with that, and how do you help them?
I mean, well, it's not just me. First of
I
all,
mean,
which is good. No, we have actually a team of individuals there to help guide our patients and their families through these kinds of diagnoses and medical conditions. And so, obviously, as you know, one of the physicians, myself and my colleagues certainly try to arm them and educate them with as much information as they're able to take on at the time. But we have other individuals in the hospital, social workers helping.
I was going to ask, who is this team? That
we have child life specialists, especially for some of the younger kids that, John was older and was able to understand, a lot of what his physicians were talking about with him. But there are much younger children who have a much harder time understanding, why am I getting poked all the time? What's happening? Why am I not at school with my friends?
Why am I feeling like this?
Exactly. Why am I feeling like this? So, so we do have a lot of psychosocial support that are there for our patients and families, which is
I'll just say to that, so I ended up being at 3 hospitals. The first one was Hartford Healthcare, then Dana-Farber, and then Sloan Kettering in New York. And I wanted to bring that up because at Hartford and Dana-Farber, I was in the adult sections. It wasn't until I got to New York that I was put in the pediatric section. And I'm telling you, it changed my mindset altogether.
Really?
Going from being 20 and the youngest person in a sector for oncology being treated, to then being the oldest by far when you're next to 4 or 5-year-olds, 5-month-year-olds, going through similar diseases, it really put things into perspective.
Oh, I can't imagine. I just can't imagine. Wow. So all of you are doing so much to make such a difference, and it takes a village. I mean, it takes so many people to be part of this team and to make things happen and help your patients better. It's just, I was a nurse, so I have a sense of what it was like. But for each of you today, here you are doing this, and it's just huge, and it makes such a difference. Would each of you share what it means to you to be part of this process? I'll start with you, Caitlin.
Yep, so it really is one of those rewarding job professions where you can go home and be like, it was a rough day, we're on an urgent need for whatever it may be, but you know that you're helping to save lives in the community. And I don't think a lot of people realize that they probably know someone who has needed it. I know John through the blood center, but my husband needed it for an emergency situation. One of my dear friends needed it in her cancer battle.
Wow.
If you know someone who's undergone surgery, they've likely needed it. My dad needed it for his. So it's really one of those things where you can leave the job at the end of the day and go, I truly am making a difference.
Yeah.
And everyone can feel that way by just giving up an hour of their time and coming to donate. And you can save, as we like to say, 2 or more lives in the community depending on the product that you deliver.
That's just it. 1 pint of blood can service 3 people, right? Which is totally mind-boggling. John, what about you?
Well, as Caitlin was mentioning, at the blood center, a lot of us have been touched, personally. So I'm just one of many stories, quite honestly, at our blood center, where whether or not it was the individual, one of our colleagues that had received blood, or one of their family members, is how they were introduced into this industry of, in a way, giving back through doing the work to getting the blood there. But I love it. It's incredible, to be honest, to be able to work day in and day out. I try and take the weekends off. Sometimes, being in the industry that we're in, you've just got to keep going. But to work day in and day out, to produce the blood for the hospitals, to help the patients that I used to be, is, I'm not going to lie, it's an incredible feeling.
And how about you?
I mean, there are so many rewarding aspects to my job and to working in a hospital and pediatric setting. One of the greatest things that the joys I take is when our patients come in and tell us about some aspect of their life that has nothing to do with why I'm seeing them. They're telling me about their vacation, or that they graduated or did something amazing in school, and it is just wonderful to see our patients out there, living their lives. Exactly. So those are the moments that I really cherish, as much as making sure that they're staying healthy and understanding their own conditions, if it's something that's chronic or if it's something that's temporary. But it is definitely rewarding, and I love it.
I can't believe that. I told you this time would go by so fast, and it's gone by so fast. This has been absolutely wonderful, and I just want to thank each one of you for what you're doing, because you are making such a huge difference. And by being here today, you're allowing us to participate in this. So thank you so much for being here. You're just wonderful. And all of you out there, donate blood. Just save a life. And thank you for being here, and until next time, keep making those caring connections.